Part 1, The Discovery. Mara Vey had always believed betrayal would feel loud. She imagined shouting, tears, a moment so sharp it split the day clean in two, something unmistakable, something that announced itself. Instead, it arrived quietly, like a door left ajar in a house she thought she knew. The residential ring of Astor Station rotated at its usual pace, artificial dawn washing the curved corridors in amber light. Mara walked home from her shift with her jacket slung over one shoulder, boots echoing softly against composite flooring. Everything was ordinary, comfortably, dangerously ordinary. She hadn't planned to come home early. Her research team had wrapped ahead of schedule, an unexpected calibration success, and the relief had buoyed her all the way through the transit lift. She'd even considered bringing home something warm from the lower markets. A small surprise for Elias. He'd been distant lately, buried in his work with the xenolinguistics delegation, and she told herself space was temporary. Stress-induced. Normal, that was the word she kept using. Normal. The door to their unit slid open at her biometric touch. At first, nothing seemed wrong. The lights were dimmer than usual, adjusted to evening cycle. The air was warmer, carrying a faint, unfamiliar scent, metallic, almost floral. Mara paused just inside the threshold, her instincts pricking in a way she couldn't immediately justify. Then she heard the sound, a voice, not Elia's. It was soft, melodic, layered with a resonance she felt more than heard. The syllables curved strangely, as if shaped by a throat not designed for human speech. Mara's breath stalled. The sound came from the inner room, their room. She moved without conscious decision, each step careful, quiet. Her pulse thundered in her ears, distorting the space around her. The walls felt closer now, the ceiling lower, the air thick with something she didn't have a name for yet. She stopped just short of the doorway and saw them. Elias stood near the bed, his back half turned, his hands lifted, not touching but close, hovering as if he were afraid of doing something irreversible. His face was open in a way Mara hadn't seen in months. Soft, unguarded. In front of him stood a woman. No, not a woman. She was taller than Mara by a few centimeters, her posture unnaturally fluid. Her skin shimmered faintly, a pale opalescent hue that shifted with the light. Fine bioluminescent markings traced along her neck and down her arms, glowing softly like constellations beneath translucent skin. Her eyes were elongated, dark, reflective, not monstrous, not frightening. Beautiful in a way that made Mara's chest tighten painfully. The alien woman's hand was raised, fingers long and elegant, resting just over Elias' heart, and he was letting her. Time fractured. Mara waited for something to happen, for Elias to turn, for the woman to notice her, for alarms to sound or gravity to fail. But nothing did. The station rotated. The lights hummed. The universe remained indifferent. Elias spoke her name, not Mara's. The alien woman tilted her head slightly, listening, and smiled. The expression was unmistakable, intimate, earned. That was when Mara understood. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't curiosity or diplomacy or research. This was personal. Her foot shifted against the floor. The sound was small, barely there, but it was enough. Elias turned. The color drained from his face so fast it was almost impressive. His mouth opened, closed, then opened again as if he were trying to assemble language from pieces that no longer fit together. Mara, he said, her name finally. The alien woman turned more slowly. Her eyes settled on Mara with calm assessment, no guilt, no surprise, just awareness, as if she had known this moment would come. Mara felt something inside her go very still. "Who is she?" Mara asked. Her voice didn't shake, that frightened her more than anything. Elias stepped back instinctively, creating space between himself and the alien woman, but the movement came too late to mean anything. "This isn't," he started. Mara raised a hand. "Don't," she said. "Just don't." The alien woman lowered her hand and took a step back on her own. The glow along her skin dimmed slightly, responding to the shift in emotional atmosphere. Mara noticed the detail distantly, the scientist in her cataloging even as the wife in her fractured. "I am called Salith," the alien woman said. Her voice was careful, now modulated, respectful. Mara looked at her fully for the first time. Up close, the differences were undeniable. Subtle ridges along the jawline, a faint iridescence in the whites of her eyes. She was unmistakably non-human and unmistakably real. "How long?" Mara asked Elias. He swallowed hard. "I didn't plan for this," he said. "It just happened." Mara laughed once, a short, sharp sound that surprised them both. "It always does," she said. Salith watched the exchange with an intensity that made Mara's skin prickle. "I did not intend harm," Salith said. "Our bond," Mara's gaze snapped to her. "Don't," Mara said quietly. "You don't get to explain this to me." Salith inclined her head. "Understood." That somehow made it worse. Mara turned back to Elias. "You let her into our home. I didn't think you'd be back so early." The words fell into the space between them like broken glass. Mara stared at him. "Not I'm sorry, not I didn't mean for you to find out like this, just logistics, timing." She nodded slowly. "I see," she said. Elias took a step toward her. "Mara, please, this is complicated." "Everything is complicated," she replied. "Marriage was complicated. That didn't stop us from choosing it." Salith shifted, her expression tightening in a way that suggested discomfort, perhaps even shame, but she did not leave. Mara noticed that too. "You should go," Mara said to Salith. Salith hesitated, then looked at Elias. That single glance told Mara everything she needed to know. "Go," Mara repeated, sharper now. Salith bowed her head slightly. "I regret the pain caused." Then she passed Mara without touching her, close enough that Mara felt a faint static along her skin, a residual hum of unfamiliar biology. The door slid shut behind her. Silence flooded the room. Elias exhaled shakily. "Mara, how long?" she asked again. He closed his eyes. 3 months. The number hit her harder than the image had. 3 months of shared meals, of quiet evenings, of lies disguised as exhaustion. Mara nodded once. Then she turned and walked out of the room, not running. Not crying, just moving forward because stopping felt impossible. Behind her, Elias called her name. She did not turn around. Part 2, Fracture Lines. Mara did not go far. She crossed the living area, past the dining alcove where 2 cups still sat on the table from that morning, past the window where the curve of Astor Station cut the stars into a slow, orderly arc. She stopped only when her hand found the cold metal of the balcony rail. She stood there gripping it, waiting for something inside her to break. It didn't. What came instead was a clarity so sharp it almost hurt. Behind her, Elias hesitated at the bedroom threshold. She could feel him there without looking, the familiar weight of his presence now distorted like an object seen through warped glass. "Mara," he said again, softer, careful, as if volume had ever been the problem. She did not turn. "Say it," she replied. He took a few steps closer. She heard the fabric of his clothes shift, the faint scuff of his shoes against the floor. I didn't mean for it to happen this way, he said. Mara closed her eyes. Not that, she said. Say the truth. Silence stretched. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, lower, stripped of the careful phrasing he used in committee hearings and research briefings. I fell in love with her. The words landed cleanly, no excuses, no justifications, just fact. Mara exhaled slowly through her nose. She waited for the delayed reaction she'd always been warned about, the collapse, the tears, the rage. None came. Her thoughts aligned instead, snapping into a new configuration that made terrible sense. How? She asked. When? Elias stopped moving. It started as translation work, he said. You know that her species doesn't process meaning the way we do. Language for them isn't just symbolic, it's experiential, emotional. We had to build shared reference points. Mara opened her eyes and stared out at the stars. So you bonded, she said flatly. Yes, and you didn't stop. No, the honesty hurt more than a lie would have. Why didn't you tell me, she asked. Elias swallowed. Because I didn't understand it at first, and then I was afraid that once I did, saying it would make it real. Mara turned then, slowly, finally. Do you hear yourself, she asked. You didn't tell me because you didn't want to face the consequences. He flinched. I didn't want to lose you, he said. Mara laughed again, quieter this time. You already did. The words hung between them. Elias looked like he might argue, then seemed to realize how futile that would be. He sank down onto the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, hands laced together. She's not just someone, he said. Salith is part of a delegation whose biology doesn't separate connection from survival. For her people, bonding is necessary, Mara finished. I've read the preliminary briefs. He looked up, startled. I'm not ignorant, Elias, she continued. I know their neurochemistry. I know what cross-species resonance can do. That doesn't absolve you, he nodded slowly. I know. Mara studied him. This man, this familiar stranger, had shared a decade of her life, shared goals, shared space, shared plans that now felt like artifacts from a civilization already fallen. You brought her here, Mara said quietly, into our bed. Elias closed his eyes. Yes, that more than anything else finally cracked something, not in a dramatic way, not explosively, but a fissure opened deep and final. Mara stepped back from him, creating distance that felt suddenly essential. She knew about me, Mara said. It wasn't a question. Yes, and she stayed. Elias hesitated. She didn't see it the way we do. Mara's gaze sharpened. Explain. For her people, Elias said carefully, bonding doesn't erase prior bonds. Layers them, they don't conceptualize exclusivity the same way. Mara felt a chill move through her. So she thought she could have you, Mara said, without taking anything from me. Yes, and you let her. Elias didn't answer. He didn't need to. Mara turned away again, walking toward the spare room. She stopped at the door, one hand resting on the frame. I'm staying here tonight, she said. You're not. He looked up sharply. Mara, you made your choice, she said. Now live with it somewhere else. For a moment, it looked like he might refuse, might argue, might try to reclaim ground that was no longer his. Then he nodded. I'll go to the Institute housing, he said. Good. He stood, collected a few items in silence, and paused near the door. I never meant to hurt you, he said. Mara did not respond. The door slid shut behind him. Only then did she allow herself to sit. The room felt too large without him, or perhaps it had always been this size and she had only just noticed. She pressed her palms to her eyes, breathing slowly, methodically, like she was stabilizing after a sudden loss of gravity. When she lowered her hands, her slate pulsed on the table. An incoming message from an unrecognized identifier. Mara frowned and opened it. Salith, I believe we must speak. Mara stared at the words. A flare of anger rose, sharp and immediate, the audacity of it, the presumption. Her fingers hovered over the reply field, ready to type something scathing. Then she stopped. A curiosity edged in, not gentle but insistent. She deleted her first response before sending it. Mara, no, the reply came almost instantly. Salith, I understand your refusal. I will still be here. Mara's jaw tightened. She closed the slate and set it aside, forcing herself to stand, to move, to exist. She changed clothes. She showered, scrubbing harder than necessary as if she could erase the image burned into her mind. When she lay down in the spare bed, sleep did not come. Instead, thoughts circled, not just of Elias, but of Salith, of the way she had stood in the room unafraid, of the certainty in her gaze, of the fact that she had not hidden, not apologized excessively, not begged. She had stayed. That detail refused to loosen its grip. Morning came too quickly. Mara woke to the soft chime of her slate, an institutional alert she could not ignore. Mandatory review notice subject, cross-species interaction compliance attendance required. Her stomach tightened. She sat up, fully awake now. The timing was not coincidental. She opened the notice, scanning the details. The review was broad, procedural in language, but the implications were clear. Something about the Zeno delegation was under scrutiny, and Elias was at the center of it. Mara stared at the screen, a new realization settling heavily in her chest. This wasn't just about her marriage. This was bigger, more dangerous. And whether she wanted it or not, she was already part of it. Part 3, the other woman. Mara did not reply to the message. She read it once more in the quiet of early cycle, then locked her slate and set it face down on the counter as if distance alone might neutralize its presence. The apartment felt unfamiliar now, rearranged by absence. Elia's chair sat empty, his mug untouched, the place where he should have been registered like a missing limb. She dressed with precision, choosing neutral tones, professional lines, armor disguised as routine. When she left the unit, she did not look back. The review chamber was located in the administrative tier, too polished to be comforting, too transparent to feel safe. Glass walls curved along the corridor, revealing other rooms where other people waited for other reckonings. Mara signed in and took her seat. The panel consisted of 5 members, 3 human, 2 non-human. One of the latter belonged to Salith species, tall, luminous markings subdued, posture formally reserved. Its presence tightened something in Mara's chest she hadn't realized was already taut. Dr. Mara Vey, the chair began, thank you for attending on short notice. She inclined her head. I assume this concerns the xenolinguistics delegation. It does, the chair replied, specifically unauthorized cross-species bonding events. Mara kept her expression neutral. I am not part of that delegation. No, the chair agreed. But you are married to its lead human interface. Was Mara corrected silently. And, the chair continued, your expertise in cognitive resonance makes your perspective relevant. Mara folded her hands in her lap. If this is an attempt to involve me in my husband's misconduct, it is an attempt, the chair said smoothly, to understand the scope of the issue. The non-human panelist inclined its head slightly. Your emotional proximity is not a liability, it said. It is data. The phrasing made Mara's jaw tighten. You want my reaction, she said, my response, my damage. We want the truth, the chair said. Mara considered that for a long moment, then she spoke. I discovered the relationship by accident, she said. There was no disclosure, no consent, no mitigation. That alone violates interspecies ethical protocol. The chair nodded. We are aware. Good, Mara continued. Because whatever justification you are being given that this bonding is unavoidable, necessary, or culturally benign is incomplete. The non-human panelist's markings brightened slightly, a sign of attention. Explain, the chair said. Mara inhaled slowly. Bonding for Salith species is not merely emotional, she said. It is neurochemical synchronization. Prolonged exposure alters perception, prioritization, decision-making. For humans, it can override established attachments without erasing awareness of them. In other words, the chair said, he knew what he was doing. Yes, Mara replied, and so did she. The non-human panelist shifted. Salith did not act with malice. Mara met its gaze. Intent does not negate impact. Silence followed. Finally, the chair spoke. You are dismissed for now. We may call on you again. Mara stood, nodded once, and left without waiting for permission. She did not go home. Instead, she went where she knew Salith would be. The Zeno delegation quarters occupied a sealed wing near the diplomatic ring, guarded but not inaccessible. Mara requested entry under academic review credentials. The request was approved faster than she liked. Salith was alone when Mara entered the chamber. The room was dim, lit by low-spectrum light that accentuated the faint glow beneath Salith's skin. She stood near a window that displayed a projection of her home system, a spiral of pale stars unfamiliar to human charts. You came, Salith said. Mara stopped several paces away. I told you no. Yes, Salith replied, but you needed to see me. Mara laughed without humor. You're very confident. Salith turned to face her fully. Confidence is not arrogance when outcomes are predictable. That sounds like something Elias would say, Mara snapped. Salith's expression shifted, subtle but unmistakable. You are angry, she said, at him, at me, at the structure that allowed this to happen. Congratulations, Mara said. You can read the room. Salith did not rise to the provocation. I did not come between you, Salith said. Your bond was already fractured. Mara's vision sharpened dangerously. You don't get to diagnose my marriage. I experienced it, Salith replied, through him. The words hit harder than Mara expected. You felt me, Mara said quietly. Yes, the admission hung heavy. For my people, Salith continued, connection reveals truth. I did not know you, but I knew his dissonance, his longing, his absence even while present. Mara stepped closer, and instead of stopping, you stayed. Yes. Why? Salith met her gaze without flinching. Because leaving would not have restored you, and because my presence forced what was already inevitable. Mara's hands clenched at her sides. That's not your decision to make, she said. No, Salith agreed, but it is one I made. Silence stretched between them, taut and vibrating. Finally, Mara spoke again. Do you love him? Salith did not answer immediately. Love, she said at last, is not the correct translation, but it is the closest one you have. Mara closed her eyes briefly. And what am I to you? She asked. Salith's glow dimmed. You are the one he was anchored to, she said, and the one he is breaking from. The words should have destroyed Mara. Instead, they clarified something she had been circling since the moment she opened that bedroom door. Elias had not been taken, he had let go. Mara straightened. This ends, she said, one way or another. Salith inclined her head. I believe you. As Mara turned to leave, Salith spoke again. The delegation is not what it appears to be, she said, and Elias is more entangled than you know. Mara paused at the threshold. Tell me, she said without turning, why you're warning me. Salith's voice softened. Because when this collapses, she said, it will not be him they destroy first. Mara left without replying, but the warning followed her all the way back into the light. Part 4, Lines of Contagion. Mara did not sleep that night. She lay on her side in the spare room facing the wall, listening to the quiet hum of the station through its bones. Every system had a sound if you paid attention long enough. Air circulation, a thermal regulation, structural compensation. Astor Station was always correcting itself, always adjusting to strain before it became failure. She wondered, not for the first time, why human systems waited until something broke. By early cycle, her slate pulsed again. This time it was Salith. Elias, we need to talk, please. Mara stared at the message for a long moment before locking the slate and setting it aside. She wasn't ready to hear him try to explain what she now understood far too well. Instead, she pulled up the Zeno delegation files she still had access to through her research clearance. The data was supposed to be compartmentalized, but oversight failures had a way of leaving seams. She followed those seams: neuroresonance reports, bonding frequency charts, behavioral adaptation logs, all of it framed as cooperative acclimation. All of it incomplete. What wasn't included mattered more. She cross-referenced the bonding cases, humans assigned as long-term interfaces. There were 7. Elias made 8. 8 people whose decision-making profiles shifted measurably after prolonged contact. 8 whose loyalties, priorities, and ethical thresholds softened, not erased, but blurred, and every one of them had been placed in positions of procedural leverage. Mara's stomach tightened. This wasn't incidental, it was strategy. Her slate chimed again, this time with a system alert she couldn't ignore. Security notice. Your recent data access has been flagged for review, so they were watching now. Good. She shut down the slate and dressed quickly, mind already racing ahead. If the delegation was using bonding as a method of influence, then exposure wasn't just personal, it was political, diplomatic, dangerous. And Elias was at the center of it, whether he understood that or not. She left the apartment and took a public transit route, deliberately passing through 3 heavily monitored sectors. Visibility mattered now, so did witnesses. She arrived at the institute just as the early shift change began. Researchers moved in clusters, voices low, expressions focused. Familiar ground, familiar language. Elias was waiting near the atrium. He looked exhausted. His shoulders were slumped, his eyes shadowed, his posture stripped of its usual confidence. When he saw her, something like relief flickered across his face. Mara, he said, stepping toward her. She stopped several paces away. Don't, she said. Not yet. He froze. There's more going on, he said quickly. I think you know that. I do, Mara replied, and I know you're compromised. The word landed hard. Elias flinched. I'm not, you are, she cut in, neurochemically, cognitively, whether you intended it or not. Silence stretched between them. You've been altered, she continued. Not controlled, not replaced, but nudged, enough to make choices you'd have questioned before. Elias looked away. Salith didn't do that on purpose. I'm not talking about her, Mara said. I'm talking about the delegation. He turned back sharply. What? They know exactly what prolonged bonding does, Mara said. They've been placing bonded humans into strategic roles. You weren't special, you were selected. Elias stared at her, disbelief warring with something deeper. That's not, he stopped himself, swallowed. I would have noticed. Would you, Mara asked, or would the part of you that notices have learned to rationalize? His silence was answer enough. You love her, Mara said, or whatever your brain is calling love right now, that doesn't make you immune. Elias dragged a hand through his hair. Why are you telling me this? Because, Mara said, you're still human and because I need you lucid. For what? For what comes next? A security presence moved at the edge of the atrium, subtle but real, too many eyes, too much interest. They're going to try to bury this, Mara said, or isolate it, make it a relationship misconduct issue instead of a systemic one. And you won't let them, Elias said quietly. No, Mara agreed, I won't. Elias hesitated, then said, Salith warned you, didn't she? Yes. She's scared, he said, not for herself. Mara studied him, for you. For what happens when this collapses, Elias replied. Her people don't survive political failure the way ours do. Mara nodded slowly. Neither do whistleblowers. The implication settled between them. You're asking me to help you expose this, Elias said. I'm telling you, Mara replied, that you already are part of it. The only choice you have left is how. Another silence. Then Elias straightened just a little. Then I need to tell you something, he said. Something I didn't understand until now. Mara waited. The delegation's next phase, Elias said, it isn't about influence, it's about integration. Mara's breath slowed. Define integration. Permanent bonding, he said, scaled, institutionalized, humans linked to them at every level of governance. Mara felt cold spread through her chest. How soon, she asked. Elias met her eyes, soon enough that stopping it won't be quiet. Mara nodded once. Good, she said. I was worried this would be subtle. Behind them, the institute lights brightened to full cycle. Around them, the system moved on, unaware of how close it was to being rewritten. Mara turned and walked toward the secured research wing. Elias followed. And somewhere across the station, Salith stood beneath an unfamiliar sky, knowing that the bond she had formed had finally triggered what her people feared most. Resistance. Part 5, a pressure test. The first attempt to silence Mara came wrapped in courtesy. It arrived as a calendar request marked collaborative consultation, flagged with senior priority and routed through 3 departments that rarely spoke unless something had gone wrong. The language was neutral. The timing was not. Mara accepted it anyway. Refusal would have been logged. Acceptance would be watched. At this stage, either choice carried risk, and she preferred the kind that let her sit at the table. The meeting room overlooked the station's outer arc, where the stars curved slowly past reinforced glass. 4 people were already seated when she entered, 2 administrators, 1 legal liaison, and 1 xeno-delegation observer whose species she did not immediately recognize. No Salith, that absence was deliberate. Dr. Vey, the senior administrator said warmly, "Thank you for coming on such short notice." Mara took the seat offered to her. "I assume this concerns my recent data access." It concerns your well-being, the legal liaison replied smoothly, and the well-being of the station. Mara folded her hands. Then we share a goal. The administrator smiled thinly. You've raised some serious concerns, allegations of systemic manipulation. That sort of claim carries weight and consequences. Yes, Mara said, it does. The Zeno delegation observer tilted its head, its eyes faceted, dark, fixed on her with unsettling intensity. Your conclusions, it said, are based on incomplete understanding of our bonding practices. Then complete them, Mara replied, publicly. Transparently, a pause, that is not possible, the observer said. Then neither is containment, Mara answered. The administrator cleared his throat. Dr. Vey, no one is accusing you of wrongdoing, but stress, personal stress, can lead to misinterpretation. There it was, the reframing. You're suggesting my marital situation compromises my judgment, Mara said. We're suggesting, the liaison said carefully, that stepping back might be prudent, a temporary leave with full compensation. Mara leaned back slightly. You want me quiet. We want you safe, the administrator insisted. This line of inquiry puts you at odds with powerful interests. That was already true, Mara replied. You're just acknowledging it now. Silence stretched. Then Mara stood. I will not be taking leave, she said, and I will be submitting a formal disclosure to the Ethics Council within the next cycle. The administrator's smile vanished. That would escalate matters unnecessarily, he said. No, Mara replied. It would document them. She left before they could stop her. The corridor outside felt colder, narrower. She was halfway to the transit lift when her slate chimed, an encrypted channel she hadn't used in years. SIVN, they're moving. Mara's pulse quickened. MARA, on what? The reply came after a beat. SIVN, on you and on Salith. Mara swore under her breath and changed direction, rerouting toward the diplomatic wing. She found Salith where she expected her to be, standing near the containment garden, bioluminescent flora casting shifting light across her skin. Two security officers lingered nearby under the pretense of patrol. They're isolating you, Mara said quietly as she approached. Salith turned, her glow dimming in recognition. Yes. You knew this would happen, Mara said. Yes. Why didn't you leave? Salith studied her. Because leaving would validate the narrative they are constructing, that I am the anomaly. Mara glanced at the guards. They're preparing to remove you. I am aware, Salith said. They will call it procedural. Mara's mind raced. If they detain you, they control the story. Yes. And Elias, Mara asked. Salith's expression tightened. He will be pressured to comply, to recant, to become proof that the system works. Mara clenched her jaw. Not if I get there first. Salith's gaze sharpened. You will expose us both. Good, Mara replied. Exposure is harder to erase. For a moment, Salith hesitated. Then she reached out, not touching, but close enough that Mara felt the faint static again. There is something you should know, Salith said. The bond between Elias and me, it is no longer symmetrical. Mara frowned. Explain. He is weakening, Salith said. The conflict within him is disrupting resonance. If forced into compliance now, the damage could be permanent. Mara inhaled slowly. They're not just manipulating him, she said. They're breaking him. Yes. Mara straightened. Then we don't give them time. She turned and walked away, already pulling up channels, authorizations, emergency ethics protocols that were rarely used because invoking them meant public failure. Behind her, Salith watched with something like awe. By the time Mara reached the Institute's central forum, the first alerts were already spreading, rumors, whispers, fragmented reports of detentions and sealed wings. Mara stepped onto the public dais and activated the broadcast. Her credentials authenticated, her voice carried. "This is Dr. Mara Vey," she said. "I am issuing a formal ethics disclosure regarding unauthorized cognitive influence through cross-species bonding. This disclosure is being logged across all civilian and oversight channels." The system tried to throttle the feed, it failed, faces turned, conversations halted. The station listened. Mara spoke clearly, precisely, naming protocols, presenting data, drawing lines no one could pretend not to see. Is in the control wing, administrators scrambled. In the diplomatic quarter, Salith closed her eyes, feeling the shift ripple outward. And somewhere in the Institute, Elias felt the bond strain not toward compliance but toward clarity. Mara finished the disclosure and terminated the feed herself. The silence that followed was profound. Then alarms began to sound. Part 6, a fallout. The alarms did not mean evacuation. Mara knew that immediately. They were containment tones, low, layered frequencies designed to unsettle without causing panic. Astor Station used them when something had gone wrong that authorities wanted handled quietly. The sound threaded through corridors and open spaces alike, impossible to ignore, impossible to localize. People stopped walking. Conversations died mid-sentence. Security shutters slid partway down over secondary passages, not sealing, just narrowing. Control without declaration. Mara stepped off the dais and blended into the sudden stillness as if she had every right to be there, because she did. Her slate vibrated continuously now, requests and alerts stacking faster than she could read them. She ignored most, skimming only for one name, Elias, nothing yet. She pushed through a crowd of frozen onlookers and headed for the Institute's lower wing, where the xenolinguistics labs intersected with administrative oversight. As if they were moving to contain the damage, that was where the pressure would concentrate. She wasn't the only one who knew it. Security teams moved with purpose now, no longer pretending at routine. 2 officers tried to block a corridor ahead of her. "Restricted access," one said. Mara slowed, then held up her slate, authorization flaring white. "Emergency ethics escalation," she said. "Stand aside." They hesitated just long enough. That hesitation was her opening. She passed through before the second officer could object. The corridor beyond was quieter, insulated from the alarms. Here the station felt tense, coiled, doors were sealed where they shouldn't have been. Displays flickered between information states as if the system itself were unsure what story it was allowed to tell. She reached the lab entrance and found it guarded, 3 officers, 1 internal compliance agent, and Elias. He stood between them and the door, shoulders squared, face pale but resolute. When he saw Mara, his eyes widened then sharpened. "You shouldn't be here," he said. "I could say the same," she replied, stopping beside him. The compliance agent stepped forward. "Dr. Elias Vey, you are required to accompany us for debrief and stabilization." "Stabilization," Mara repeated coldly. "That's a generous euphemism." The agent ignored her. "You are exhibiting signs of cognitive distress inconsistent with your role." Elias laughed once, bitter. "I'm distressed because I finally understand what you've been letting happen." The agent's jaw tightened. "This conversation is no longer productive." Two officers moved forward. Mara stepped in front of Elias without thinking. I issued a public disclosure, she said. Any action you take against him now will be logged as retaliatory. The agent hesitated. That word retaliatory had weight. You have no authority here, the agent said. I have visibility, Mara replied. Which is worse? The silence stretched, broken only by the distant hum of alarms. Then the lab door behind them slid open. Salith stepped out. Her bioluminescent markings were brighter than Mara had ever seen them, pulsing in slow, deliberate patterns that radiated controlled intensity. The officers instinctively took a step back. Enough, Salith said, the word carried not as command but as resonance. The air itself seemed to shift, pressure redistributing in subtle waves. The compliance agent stiffened. You are not authorized to. I am authorized, Salith interrupted, by the treaty you are currently violating. She lifted one long finger and tapped a control embedded in her wrist. Data bloomed into the air: treaty clauses, emergency override conditions, oversight triggers. Mara recognized several. Your attempt to isolate bonded humans following public disclosure constitutes coercive containment, Salith said. That action nullifies your procedural protections. The agent's face drained of color. Elias stared at Salith. You did this. I prepared for it, Salith replied, not looking at him. I hoped not to use it. The officers shifted uncertainly. The alarms changed tone, higher now, sharper. Across the station, systems were reconfiguring, not in panic but in response. Oversight nodes activating, external observers waking up. The compliance agent backed away slowly. This isn't over. No, Mara said. It's finally on record. They retreated. When they were gone, the corridor felt suddenly too large. Elias sagged, bracing a hand against the wall. Mara caught his arm without hesitation. You okay? She asked. He nodded weakly. I think so. The resonance, it's quieter. Salith turned to him. The bond is destabilizing. That is not kindness. It is consequence. He looked at her, then really looked. I never wanted to hurt her, he said. I know, Salith replied. That is why this hurts you. Mara released his arm and stepped back. This doesn't fix us, she said to Elias. Don't confuse survival with reconciliation, he nodded. I won't. She turned to Salith. They're not done. No, Salith agreed, but neither are we. The alarms faded gradually, replaced by a steady chime indicating system review status. Not resolution, just acknowledgement. People would talk now, investigate, choose sides. Outside the viewport, the stars continued their slow rotation, indifferent but constant. Mara looked between the two of them, her husband, altered but waking, the alien woman who had been both catalyst and warning. Nothing was simple, nothing would be clean. But for the first time since she opened that bedroom door, the truth was no longer hidden behind walls or excuses. It was exposed. And exposure, Mara knew, changed everything. Part 7, Public Reckoning. The station did not erupt into chaos. That was the most unsettling part. Disaster Station absorbed disruption the way it absorbed everything else, through protocols, committees, and controlled language. By the next cycle, the alarms were gone, the corridors reopened, and the public feeds framed the incident as a procedural review arising from cross-cultural misalignment. Mara watched the broadcast from her apartment, arms folded, jaw tight. They're minimizing, Elias said quietly from the opposite side of the room. Yes, Mara replied, that's phase 1. He nodded. He had learned quickly not to argue with her when she used that tone. The apartment felt divided now, not spatially but ethically. They occupied the same rooms without inhabiting the same life. Elias slept on the couch. Mara kept the spare room. Every interaction was careful, negotiated, provisional. Salith was no longer allowed on the station's main ring. Officially, it was protective relocation. In practice, it was containment by distance. She had been moved to a diplomatic habitat, comfortable, monitored, isolated. Mara hadn't seen her since the corridor, but she felt her absence like a pressure change. Her slate chimed with an incoming request. Public Oversight Committee testimony requested. Mara exhaled slowly. They want you, Elias said. Yes. Are you going to do it? Yes, he hesitated. They'll dissect everything, your work, our marriage. I know, Mara said. That's the cost. Elias looked at her, really looked, and something like shame flickered across his face. I never meant for you to be the one paying it, he said. Mara met his gaze evenly. Intent isn't currency anymore. The hearing was broadcast, not station-wide, but enough that excerpts would circulate, enough that nothing said could be taken back. Mara sat alone at the witness table, hands folded, posture composed. Across from her, the committee members waited, human and non-human alike. The cameras hovered at the edges of the room, discreet but omnipresent. Dr. Vey, the chair began, you have alleged systemic misuse of cross-species bonding mechanisms. Yes, Mara said, and you have personal involvement with one of the affected parties. Yes, do you believe your testimony is unbiased? Mara didn't hesitate. No, a murmur rippled through the chamber. I believe it is informed, she continued. Which is more valuable? The chair studied her. Explain. Bias implies distortion, Mara said. I am not distorting anything, I am contextualizing it. My marriage did not fail because of alien influence. It failed because my husband made choices he was increasingly incentivized to rationalize. Elias' name was not spoken. It didn't need to be. The delegation exploited a known neuro-resonant effect, Mara continued. They did not force compliance. They engineered environments where resistance felt unreasonable. The non-human committee member leaned forward. You describe influence as contagion. Yes, Mara replied, not infection, contagion. It spreads through proximity, trust, and unexamined goodwill. The room was silent. And what, the chair asked, do you believe should happen now? Mara considered the question carefully. Transparency, she said. Independent review, temporary suspension of bonding-based interfaces, and most importantly, she paused. Acknowledgement that harm does not require malicious intent. The chair leaned back. You are asking us to hold multiple parties accountable without assigning villainy, she said. Yes, Mara replied, because systems fail more often through politeness than cruelty. The hearing adjourned without verdict. That was expected. Outside, the commentary exploded anyway. Some framed Mara as brave, others as vindictive, a few as unstable. The narratives fractured along predictable lines. Mara read none of it. Instead, she walked alone to the observation deck overlooking the diplomatic habitats. The stars here were filtered, softened, curated for visitors. Salith stood behind the barrier on the far side, exactly where Mara had known she would be. They regarded each other through reinforced glass. You spoke clearly, Salith said over the private channel. Truth tends to do that, Mara replied. You did not vilify me. No, Mara said, I don't need to. Salith inclined her head. Your species finds restraint difficult in moments of betrayal. So does yours, Mara said. You just express it differently. A faint pulse of light rippled across Salith's skin, amusement, perhaps, or respect. The bond with Elias is fading, Salith said, not by force, by choice. Mara absorbed that quietly. And you, she asked. I will leave when permitted, Salith replied. My role here is finished. Mara nodded once. I don't forgive you, she said. Salith's gaze did not waver. I did not expect forgiveness. But, Mara continued, I don't need to punish you either. Salith's glow softened. That is unexpected, she said. Mara turned away. As she walked back through the station, she felt something unfamiliar settle into place, not peace, not closure, but alignment. Her life was no longer centered around being chosen. It was centered around choosing. And that, she realized, was the deeper consequence of everything that had broken. Part 8, Aftermath. The committee's decision arrived 3 cycles later. Not as a single announcement, but as a sequence of memos, policy revisions, and quiet removals that only meant something if you knew where to look. Temporary suspension of all deep bonding interfaces, mandatory cognitive audits, external observers granted full access to delegation protocols. No apologies, no admissions of fault, but the machine had shifted. Mara read the final notice in her apartment, standing by the window where the stars bent along the station's curve. It wasn't justice in the way stories promised. It was something duller, heavier, permanent. Behind her, Elias packed a small case. I've been reassigned, he said. Surface research, no delegation contact. Mara nodded. That's appropriate. He zipped the case and hesitated. I don't expect forgiveness. Good, Mara replied, because I'm not offering it. He swallowed. But I need to say this anyway. I loved you. I still do in whatever broken way I have left. Mara turned to face him. Love isn't a shield, she said, and it's not an excuse. He nodded, eyes lowered. I know. He lifted the case and moved toward the door. At the threshold, he stopped. You changed everything, he said, not just for me. Mara met his gaze. I know. The door slid shut. The apartment felt quieter after that, not emptier, just honest. Later that cycle, Mara received clearance to relocate. She had requested it herself. A frontier station, smaller, less polished, less interested in burying problems under protocol. A place where research was practical and oversight was personal, where systems still failed loudly enough to be noticed. She stood on the transport platform with a single case and her slate, watching the docking lights shift from amber to green. Before boarding, she opened a final message. SALITH, our paths diverge here. But know this, your refusal to become small altered more than policy. It altered perception. Mara considered her reply carefully. Mara, then use it well. She closed the channel and stepped onto the transport. As the vessel detached from Astor Station, Mara watched the structure recede, a vast, gleaming system that had shaped her life and broken it and been forced, at last, to acknowledge both. She did not cry, she did not look back. She turned instead toward the forward viewport, where unfamiliar stars waited, unmapped, unscripted, and hers to choose. For the first time, the future was not something she shared by default, it was something she claimed. Part 9, What Remains. Time did not heal anything, it reorganized it. Frontier Station Ilex 9 was smaller than Astor, rougher around the edges, built for function rather than diplomacy. The corridors were narrow, the lighting inconsistent, the people direct. The problems here didn't wait for committees. They either got fixed or they got worse. Mara preferred it immediately. 6 months passed. She settled into her new role overseeing applied cognitive research, no politics, no delegations, no layered language hiding sharp intent. Her work focused on mitigation now, how influence spread, how it could be detected early, how systems could be designed to resist quiet erosion rather than dramatic attack. Her name followed her. Not loudly, not with ceremony, but with recognition. People knew who she was, what she had done. Some admired it, some resented it, most simply respected the clarity. That was enough. She did not contact Elias. She heard about him anyway. He complied with reassignment, completed treatment, filed a formal statement acknowledging compromised judgment without assigning blame outward. It was, by institutional standards, exemplary. By personal standards, it was irrelevant. One evening, after a long cycle calibrating a detection model, Mara stood alone in the observation dome. ILX 9's stars were raw and unfiltered, sharp against the dark. No aesthetic adjustments, no comforting curvature, her slate chimed. An external diplomatic channel, she almost ignored it. Almost. SADLITH, you were correct. Integration failed. Mara exhaled slowly. MARA, I assumed it would. A pause, longer than usual. SADLITH, my people have withdrawn from bonding-based contact with humans permanently. Mara absorbed that in silence. MARA, what happens to you? SADLITH, I am reassigned, not as liaison, as archivist. That surprised her. MARA, that sounds like exile. SADLITH, it is preservation, Salith replied. Someone must remember where we misjudged. Mara nodded to herself. MARA, then remember this too. Harm can be unintentional and still require change. The reply came almost instantly. SADLITH, I will. The channel closed. Mara remained in the dome long after, watching stars that did not care about treaties or marriages or species boundaries. She felt no triumph, no vindication, only weight and solidity. She thought briefly of the woman she had been, the one who believed discovery would be loud, that betrayal would announce itself, that love alone could insulate a life from systems larger than two people. She understood now how wrong that had been. The real rupture had not been the alien in her bedroom. It had been the moment she realized she would not disappear quietly to make others comfortable. That choice echoed, not dramatically, not heroically, but durably. Mara turned from the viewport and walked back into the station, into a life she had chosen deliberately with eyes open and no illusions left to protect. Somewhere far away, Astor Station continued to rotate. Elias continued to live. Salith continued to remember. Zandmara continued forward, not healed, but whole.